Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Steven Corporate Services. So, if you have waited to this point, it means that you are actually ready to learn everything about company registration. A lot of times, people just talk about private companies limited by shares without further dividing and explaining in detail all that it entails to register a private company. And bear it in mind, there are different types of private company, types with respect to the amount of shares and even with respect to the objective of this company. For instance, when we're talking about the finance company, or we're talking about the engineering company, or we're talking about a school, these are different types of company, and it also have different registration process and also different form of stamp duties and different types of shares, and also the requirements are different. So in the course of this lecture, we'll be talking about a few special or specialized type of private companies limited by shares. Now, every single thing we'll be doing is practical, but we'll look at the lecture notes for tonight, and in our next class, we'll continue with the practical classes because of the issues we had with the network. So, thank you so much for being part of this class. And if you are watching us currently, maybe you're not watching via the live streaming, but you're watching us from the recorded class, I also want you to know that every knowledge that will be shared here is free of charge, and it is a year it's an accumulated knowledge of years of experience that you don't just read it in a book, and you don't sit out there free of charge. But we're offering you this because we are building an online academy, and we want you to be part of this growth, to see us as we grow, watch us as we grow, and also participate with us as we grow. Now let's move into the class. Thank you. All right, so once again, welcome everyone to today's class. We're looking at practical insights on company registration, and our emphasis remains the registration of private companies limited by shares. Now, I want us to understand basically that, like I said earlier, there are different types of private companies, and the types of the company will differ based on the capital, the share capital of the company, and also the objective of the company. With respect to the share capital of the company, we're looking at, as you can see here, how to calculate the stamp duties. Now, if you're going to be paying for a particular company, you have to consider the amount of shares. If the shares is up to 1 million shares, it means that the company type or size is 1 million. Now, I think I've explained this in our previous class before, where I explained that I once registered a an auto dealer company. He's into importation and exportation of auto vehicles and automobiles and vehicles, and he was asking, would it be better for him to register with a 1 million share capital company or a 10 million share capital company? And I told him, what's the least amount of car that you have? And he said within 7 to 10 million. I said good. Now imagine presenting your certificates, probably as a contract you have, and you are being told to present your certificate before this contract can be signed. And upon the presentation, it's obvious that your company is just registered with 1 million naira shares, and you are about to sell a car worth 100 million. Does it align? The answer is no. So after saying that, he proceeded and went ahead with 10 million naira shares. So The increase of the share capital, the size of the share capital, is what determines the largeness of the company. If your share capital is higher, then definitely you have a higher company. For instance, now look at the banking sector. You're going to see that currently commercial banks have a very high amount that is placed with respect to the requirements for registration, and that is about 500 billion, 200 billion, and we will still see that distinction when we get to that part. But the point is that the amount of share capital determines the size and the largeness of the company in practical knowledge, that's in practical sense. Now looking at this, when you see the payments, you see the filing fee and the stamp duties. For all companies, you must pay filing fee and stamp duties. If it's a business name, like we talked in our previous classes, you're only allowed to pay the filing fee. You don't need to pay stamp duties. Now, stamp duties, it's only limited to companies. The incorporated trustees like ministry, church, NGO do not pay stamp duties. The company by guarantee, which is also a kind of incorporated trustee because of the charitable aspects, and the non-business aspects, cannot also pay the stamp duties because they are exempted from that. But as long as you're a company that runs a business, like a private company, a public company, or any of the other company that runs a business, you must pay stamp duty. Now, for agents, we must understand how stamp duties operate. We must understand how to calculate the stamp duties. Let's take for instance, you told that okay, you met a client that wants to register a business that is worth about 100 million to begin with. So you have to calculate the stamp duties that you would pay so that you determine the amount you will charge. So if the stamp duties, for instance, if you're registering a company of 20 million, the stamp duties will be around 136,000, while the filing fee should be around 50,000. By the time you add up together, it should be close to 200,000. Then if you're charging for that, you should charge at least 500,000 or thereabout, depending on your clients and depending on you. But considering the nature of job we do, we ensure that we charge in a way that even if there should be a loss, because you can never tell how the money will be paid, and maybe during payment of the stamp duty, the whole site may be messed up and you can lose a huge amount of money. In the course of that loss, what would you do? Is either you continue the registration with the remaining amount of money, or if you didn't charge well, you go back to the client and demand for more, which is very unprofessional. So it's always good to charge the amount that even upon a loss, you will still be able to do the job and keep something for yourself. So having said that, how do we calculate our stamp duties? Because we already know a filing fee is fixed. It's fixed. There's a particular amount that's from 1 million to 50 million. If must pay at least from 2 million shares rather to 50 million, pays 50k. If it is 1 million shares, you have to pay just 10k for filing fee. Now, when you're talking about the stamp duties, it's different. It's calculated based on the percent, that is 0.75%. And how do you calculate this 0.75%? You look at it, for each 1 million share capital, you must multiply it by 0.0075. So if you are going to be paying for just 1 million share capital, you're going to have a total of 0.0075 multiplied by 1 million. That will give you 7,500 naira. So now, in practical sense, because you're not just paying the stamp duties alone, there are other fees that are attached to the stamp duties that you've paid. Like we have the TSA. This is a treasury account levy that the government receives from every payment that is made. In fact, I was surprised when I found out about this, because I mean, why should the government be taxing you based on the amount of money you are paying to them? So you are going to be taxed also some of 150 naira for every 1 million. So when you add that to the 75, then you also check the VAT on the, oh my god, the VAT on the TSA, because now the VAT is also another tax that is taxed on the tax you're already paying. So but that is just 11 naira. Then you also check the EMT, that is the electronic money transfer levy, which is just 15 naira, as we all know. Then total will give you 770. Then when you now include the remitter charge, which is about 400 thereabout, you have about 8,100 or thereabouts. So at the end of the day, what you will be paying is about 8,000. Now when you check this for each 1 million, you're going to do the same calculation with 75 and add all this for each 1 million. So just multiply it. If you are paying 10 million, just multiply 10 million by 8. If you are paying 20 million, multiply it by 8. If you are paying by 8,000, just do the mathematics and you know how much your stamp as an agent. Now let's move to other more interesting aspect. I had to explain this briefly because we are looking at now, we're seeing 20 million shares, 30 million shares, and we'll be talking about some heavy amount of money. So it will help you know how we arrived at this destination. Now, having said that, requirements for registering a fintech. Basically, we know what a fintech is. A fintech is a company that uses technological innovation to render financial services. So let's not be so confused about the bogus name a fintech. We've had fintech company. I want to work in a fintech. I want to own a fintech. But if you ask yourself what a fintech is, actually, it's a very simple concept. It's a very simple concept. As long as you are rendering a financial service with a technological innovation, then you are actually in the fintech sector. As long as you are offering that service, or you have a company that offers such financial service with a technological innovation, then your company is a fintech. I hope I've been able to explain that better. Now, a fintech is typically registered as a company limited by shares, and it in details. After CAC registration, you still need a CBN license depending on whether it is a payment, lending, or banking. Now that is very crucial. You must understand, when you come to the finance sector, there are different areas. Because you're going to be looking at the areas that has to do with the lending, because there are just certain companies that focuses on lending alone without any deposit or payment, without any savings or investment, just lending. And we have the banking system, which basically focus more on financial transactions like payments and all that. Now, I want to take my time and explain this more efficiently. However, I will be doing another video where we will talk more about the whole banking system and all that. But for this class, my emphasis is on the finance company with respect to lending. The cheapest amount of fintech you can own is the fintech that is with the share capital of 20 million. And I know you might be wondering, why is this possible? Because when you look at the different banking requirements by CBN, you'll see that commercial banks now, for you to operate a commercial bank, you should have billions of naira before you can, go into the shares and all that. Now, but looking at here, we're just going to be registering a fintech with 20 million shares. And I've done this, I registered a fintech company with 20 million shares not quite long ago, this year. And this is how it is done. You can do this by registering it as a finance company. A finance company under CAC has a minimum share capital of 20 million, and you are going to specify that the objective you are using is lending, to carry on or to undertake a business through a finance company and activities involving lending. Just know how you couch it, but make sure you put finance company and lending in the objective so that you won't need further requirements. If you are going to be using a finance company, the share capital is just 20 million. You can still register with one director and one shareholder, and once you're done with that, you don't need to provide any approval in principle by the CBN, which is required by normal banks, the commercial banks and all that. All you need is, after the registration with CAC, you would go to a money lending agency, the money lending agency, and you get the money lending certificate. Once you get the money lending certificate, you are free to issue loan, give loan to people for a fee. You are free to engage in that, and you can create your own, probably a means online through which you can do that, as long as you have the money lending certificate from the agency. Now these agencies are in every state, and you can easily apply to the agency. You can get a lawyer, because they'll definitely go to the magistrate court to get some documents, and eventually before it can be approved with the CAC document. So the first step is getting the CAC document, and I've already explained for the fintech, the area with that has to do with lending. The CAC document can be gotten by just registering the company with 20 million shares. Having said that, let's look at our notes. We have types of banks. Most of us have heard that there are other banks that are non-financial banks, and I'll be making a little emphasis on that. We know the financial banks already. We have the financial banks and we have the non-financial banks. So the financial banks here, we have the commercial banks, the merchant banks, and we have even microfinance bank, we have the Islamic bank, and many more. Now, for these commercial banks and merchant banks, for commercial banks, we know the sort of it, like UBA, we have First Bank, and the likes. So these ones are what we already know. We're going to be looking at that in our next slide quickly. But before that, can we just talk about the non-financial banks? Now, the non-financial banks are those banks that do not necessarily have a full banking strategy like the conventional or traditional bank. So what they do in the non-financial bank is to focus majorly on, it's either they are into lending or payment, or they do it both, but they are not a bank. So we have what we call the payment service provider or the payment service terminal. That is where we have the POS. We have things like the OPay, the OCash, and others. So if you're going to be registering this, the requirement, the procedure, and everything is quite different. It's different from what you have seen in the finance company. The share capital is different. We're going to be looking at this in a practical class. Now, for microfinance bank, you can also decide to go into lending through the microfinance bank. If you are lending through the finance company and you have registered with just 20 million, you are going to have a limitation. The limitation you have is that the amount of money that you will be given, to lend out from the company, will be minimized. For instance, you cannot lend beyond a certain amount of money. You have seen that OPay, OCash, and the likes of it, they can't give beyond 100k to 1 million. In fact, it's difficult for them to give 1 million because of the restrictions they face. Some of them cannot give more than that. So if you are registering as a finance company and you are going to lending, you can't also give beyond a certain limit. So if you want to give beyond a certain limit, like say you want to give up to 10 million loan or more, your lending fintech should be registered under microfinance bank. Now, microfinance has an arm that gives it the privilege to give loan. In fact, the essence of microfinance is for loan, quick loan payments, and transactions. Unlike the conventional bank or traditional bank, where you just go in and they will take a lot of documentations, a lot of processes, reviews, and all that. You can just go to the microfinance bank and you can easily have that access. Now, your microfinance bank can also operate a different or separate PSP. How do I mean by this? Because microfinance bank can own an arm that specifically deals with lending. For instance, Okash is a branch of a microfinance bank. It is not a fintech. It's not a finance company on its own. It is not independent on its own. It is rooted and it has its origin from a microfinance bank that gives it the ability to give as much cash as possible, because it is a microfinance bank that is funding the whole cash. So you can either register your payment lending service through the finance company, or you can register it through the microfinance company. And once you do that through the microfinance, you have opportunity to give out more loans. Now I'll be doing a video on the breakdown on how to go about the co-registration properly with the whole PSP. Maybe you want to own your own payment service terminal, that is your own POS company and all that. There's a way to go about that. We'll look at that later. Now, with respect to the minimum share capital required, as you can see here, there are different companies, there are different banks, and then there are also different levels of banks. For instance, we have the international banks, we have the national banks, we have the regional banks, and all these have their different requirements. For the international bank, you'll be looking at 500 billion. That is the minimum for the share capital. For the national bank, we're looking at 200 billion. For the regional bank, we're looking at 50 billion. In our practical class, we'll consider every other share capital required for all kinds of bank, both insurance, both investment, both lending, both PSP, and all of it. We'll look at every single one of it bit by bit. Having said that, we already know for finance company that it is just 20 million, and I've told you the secret to that. Now let's move to the next. We'll look at the requirements for registering a company limited by guarantee. I believe that we have said this multiple times. I don't need to define what it is, but it's commonly used for NGOs, foundations, professional bodies, even charities and schools. And that school should only be a college or private school, not a college or private university, not a secondary or primary school. Having said that, the requirement for registration of this guarantee is 2 directors. You must have 2 directors and you must have 2 guarantors. So the guarantors are either the members or the guarantors. So each of them will be entitled to a minimum amount. Now the minimum amount they are entitled to is 100,000, not 10,000. 100,000, that is the minimum, 100,000. So they must guarantee 100,000. The essence of that 100,000 is that they will be able to repay the debtors the minimum amount of 100,000 at the event that maybe something happened and they went into some financial crisis and they had to wind up. Another word for it could be shut down, or they had to close up. Whatever the case may be, the point here is that the guaranteed amount is the amount of money they are willing to stake those guarantors on the company. Mind you, that the company has a separate legal personality from, so they will still sue the company, but the guarantors will be entitled to pay that 100,000 or more, as the case may be. Now we also know that the concept of the AG is required. If you're issuing a guarantee, like I said, guarantee is just for private universities, college of education, or school of nursing, all these technical schools that is beyond the primary and secondary level. Those schools must require the registration, the approval of the AG, and must be registered as a guarantee. So if you're advising anyone, you have to let them know that the process is long. Though CAC may not take time to give a response, but once it gets to the AG table, the Ministry of Justice Abuja, you know how big that should be. It will take a lot, because the Ministry of Justice covers a lot of functions, a lot of operations. It's not just consent they are giving for CAC. They are into a lot of other criminal activities and everything. So for you to get this approval, it takes a lot. Some would say 30 days, some would say 90 days, but I haven't seen anyone that takes 30 days. Although I have seen 60 days. I've done 60 days, but I've not seen 30 days. So if you're going to be doing that, you have to tell your clients on time that it takes a lot. It takes a lot of time. Having said that, once you are able to get your AG consent, you upload it on the portal and you proceed with the AG consent. The CAC would automatically approve it. And the question is, how do we get the AG consent? This is where professional consultation comes in. This is why it's not free knowledge. You have to pay for that. Anyway, so you apply for it anyway. You apply for the AG consent and you connect with the staffs in the AG office and keep in touch with it. Keep following it up until it is approved. That is one way to go about it. So having said that, you must ensure that your objective is non-profit. Don't start with to carry on the business, or don't include business there, because it's a non-profit. You don't make profit for business, you make profit for the objective. So as you're making profit, you are using it to pursue the object that has been registered. That is the essence of guarantee. Having said that, then you just get the requirements from the directors, the ID, the passport, the signatures, the addresses, and all that. Then you pay the filing fee of 50,000 naira and you are good. So if you're charging for guarantee, please charge well low, because you have to consider the stress and the payments and all that you will do respect to the AG securing it and all that. Then you still also check your own professional fee, and you check the fact that you are going to be doing this for 6 months or more, as the case may be. So when you're checking your charge, your professional fee, you know how much you will charge for that. I wouldn't tell you the price to charge. So having said that, requirements for registering a school. Now, this is a primary school, a secondary school, or a crèche, a nursery school, whatever you're registering. This is it. So the requirement is simple. You're going to, like I said earlier, if you are registering a non-profit school like the private university and co, what you are doing is a company limited by guarantee. And if you're going to be registering as a private school like primary school, secondary school, and co, you're going to register a company limited by shares. And if you're registering a company limited by shares, these are the requirements. So you just need one director. If it's a guarantee, two directors. If it's a share company limited by shares, just one director. Then you draft your memorandum and article of association. That is your objective. You draft it to include educational service, training, and consultancy. It must include this three. Then if you're registering a school, you should note this. There's a strict requirement of the TRCN, and this is the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria certificate. You have to be a member of the association and you have to have a certificate with that respect, and with that you can proceed your registration. I've done some schools without it. You can't proceed the registration of a school, a primary school, secondary school, as the case may be. If you don't have the certificate, CAC would officially query your work and you would officially remain on the site until you have completed this registration and provide the certificate. What is called actually is called proficiency certificate. There are different fields that requires it. For instance, the engineering field will get to that part, the banking sector will get to that part, even the legal aspects, the law firms, the architectural people, then every professional field, even the medical doctors and all that, they require proficiency certificate in order to register a company with the CAC. Having said that, once you are done with the TRCN and you have uploaded it, then you just upload the passport and all the necessary things that we've taught in the previous class. You pay the stamp duties and you proceed. For a school, the stamp duty is 1 million shares. You don't need to use 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, except you want to register a very high status or high network school where you pay, maybe the school fees will be like 1 million for a term or thereabout. Maybe in that instance you can register a school that is worth 10 million share capital or even more, but the minimum is 1 million. 1 million share capital can register a school. That is what we're trying to say. Having said that, for those of us that are lawyers that may want to register a law firm, you must pay attention to one thing. You cannot register a law firm without your NYC certificate. I just want to point that out. Some of us may just be graduates, fresh graduates, and maybe just finished law school, you've got to bar, and you're not yet done with service. You may not be able to register a law firm because your law firm will require your NYC certificate, it require your court to bar certificate, it require your Supreme Court enrollment number, and all this. So basically, a law firm is registered as a business name. You don't register a law firm as a company. If you're an agent, probably a lawyer or a wannabe lawyer, someone that is just a fresh graduate and he wants to register, he comes to you, bro, I know you're into this, you have been doing this, I have a lot of them, and then I want to register my law firm and this and that. The first thing you tell ask is if if he has done his NYC, and after that, if he has done his NYC, then if he has his call to bar certificate, then after that he already knows, because I believe as a lawyer he knows that he cannot register a law firm as a corporation. That is part of the RPC. I believe is a rule 3 or thereabouts. He cannot register the law firm as a corporation. It must be registered as a business name. So having said that, the requirement is just get the proposed name. Please take note of this. If you're going to be registering a law firm, don't put and co if you don't have a partner. There's a recent law firm I registered, and I told the client that, okay, since you are registering a law firm and this law firm you want to use Anko so badly, so the client happens to be someone that have been using Anko in her law firm name, but she haven't registered it for many years. People have known her with that particular Anko. So I asked her, the essence of the Anko is that CAC will detect the fact that you have a partner. So when we registered Anko, she told us that she doesn't have a partner, but this is the name she has been known with for a while. So we were told that she cannot proceed the registration because she needs a partner in order to complete it. So if you're registering a law firm, make sure you remove co if the person is single. If the person is single, in terms of the registration process, if it's just a person, please use the law firm. Just end it with law firm, probably XYZ law firm or XYZ legal practitioners or XYZ consult or whatever, but make sure you don't put and co except the person have a partner. Now, if you are registering a law firm and there are more than two partners, let's say there are 3 partners or more, you cannot register with 3 partners. You cannot. You can only register with 2 partners. So it's only 2 partners that can form a law firm, except probably you are doing something else like a limited partnership and all that. But with respect to the basic knowledge, register a law firm with a business name and use the co when there are 2 partners and not more and not less, or use the law firm, use it as a law firm or legal practitioner, and it to a law firm or legal practitioner when it is just one person. Please, let's not make that mistake, because I know someone that did this and really went through a lot. So having said that, you go through the normal process, the photograph, the passport, the details of the lawyer who wants to register. Once you're done with that, you pay the fee for a business name, just the usual procedure for a business name, but you're going to upload the documents that I've said in the orders. So you're going to upload it as a single file. You put the NYC certificate, the Supreme Court enrollment number, the court to bar certificate, everything will be placed in a single document, PDF document, not more than 2 MB, and you upload it at once. So having said that, this is how you register your law firm. Once they go through your documents and everything is in order, it will be approved. I know it's very easy, right? So having said that, we move to the next, which is The requirements for registering a construction company. Now, I've registered some construction company, and I can tell you that it is also a walkover if you know the requirements. So today, let's just quickly look at the following. If you see what I'm showing you here on the screen, it is usually registered as a company limited by shares. You don't use any other because it's a profit-making enterprise. So you go with company limited by share. The requirements. The requirements can be one director, or it can be one shareholder, or it can be two directors or more, but you can use a single person. A single person can register both as director, as shareholder, as the case may be. So the minimum share capital is, now this is recommended because you are dealing with construction, you are dealing with engineering, construction and all that. The recommended share capital is 10 million shares. Please don't register your engineering firm or company with 1 million shares. You only have issues. You have serious issues. In fact, you don't want to go far. If you're registering your engineering company, you have an engineering company and you want to register it with 1 million shares, you don't want to go far, because the kind of contracts that you'll be receiving, they are just contracts that you come and build fence, and they will probably pay you maybe 100,000 and you will go because of your type of company. So if you're going to be looking at a broader company, a larger company, then it's very recommended that you register with 10 million shares. The ones I've done, I did it with 10 million shares, and they boldly paid because they know what they want, they know what they're looking for. And I can tell you that those companies are registered with 10 million shares, engineering construction companies, they are doing very well in Lagos, in Abuja, and thereabouts. So the point is simple. If you're registering an engineering or construction company, please use 10 million shares. I've not done it with 1 million shares. I don't even know if it will be approved with 1 million shares, but I'm sure that the recommended share capital is 10 million shares. Having said that, your memorandum and article of association, that is the objective, must include construction, civil works, engineering, real estate, property management, and the rest. Please make sure, while couching these things, you must bring out the true essence of the company. If it's a construction company, bring it out. In fact, explain in details those area of construction, because they are mining, there are construction that has to do with road construction, there's also that of mining, even quarrying. Like, there are different types of construction. So make sure you specify, or better still, make sure you write out all types, because within the 10 million share capital you can cover all types. Having said that, now finally, if you're registering an engineering company, please note, you cannot register it without a Cohen certificate. Now, the Cohen certificate is the civil engineering requirement. It's an association that issues this certificate. You cannot get this certificate until you have completed your masters as an engineer. Once you have completed your masters, that is when you can now apply to be part of this body, after which you now write the exam before you can now get the certificate. So not all engineers can actually register a company except they have this certificate, and I've told you the process to getting it. So having said this, you see, engineering company, basically they are very lucrative in Nigeria, because every day people are building, people are constructing. You may not even be an engineer. I mean, I registered for a one of my clients in Lagos. I will withhold his name, and then he is not an engineer. He told me, "Barrister, I'm not an engineer, but I want to register a an engineering company. I have an engineer that I would work with, or rather working for me, but I'm the one going on with the registration. I'm the owner of the company. I have the contracts, I have the connections and all that." I told him, "Well, you don't qualify to register it alone, but do your partner, the engineer, does he have these requirements? If he does, you're good to go. We'll make him a director. You take the whole 100%. Now, I've seen cases where people may not have the qualification to register a company because probably that is not a line of study or their field of profession. But if they have a person who is willing, or rather who may want to work with them, they can appoint the person the director while they take the entire shares. That means that you own the company exclusively. That person only is a director which can be changed even after the incorporation. Now, this is a secret. A lot of persons don't know this. Let's say I had a situation where someone wanted to register a school, but he's not a professional teacher. He doesn't have the TRCN, right? So he met me and said, okay, we don't have this now. How do we go about this? I would probably be getting mine 2 years or 3 years from now, but I don't have any plans or the fee to get it now. This is what I told him. You have anyone that can do it, right? He said yes. Or you have someone that has certificate. So put the person in as director. You register with the person as shareholder, and you take the entire percentage of the company. So it means that you have the final decision making in that company. Once you have 100% shares, whatever you say, that's what happens. In fact, once CAC sees your name on any application to the dashboard, they approve the application immediately because you have 100% of the shares. Perhaps you are sharing with someone else, maybe your wife, and then you have another third party who you don't want in that company. You don't want that person to be part of the company, but you need something the person has for a particular time, probably to register the company. What you just do simply is put in the person as director, register your wife, share profits with your wife, probably 50-50 or 70-30, or as any amount you share, but just share with your wife. You and your wife will have exclusive right to do anything in the company. So after registration, what do you do? After registration, you can easily remove the director without any crisis. So what you cannot do ordinarily, probably maybe you're not an engineer or anything, and you don't even have a friend that is an engineer that can borrow you the certificate. You contract someone and you do that. After registration, you remove the person and you're done. So that is what some of us will do in order to get people moving with their visions, their dreams, without any limitation. Having said that, let's move to the next. Finally, so what you have learned today is priceless. We'll move to the practical class, and we'll continue with the training on corporate registration with the CAC portal. So we're learning a lot of other things as we progress. I believe this class was helpful. If you really learned something from this class, we may not learn a lot, but if you learned something, kindly maybe make a comment and encourage us to do more. Thank you.